He lived between the walls. Part 1. Mara realized someone else was living in her apartment when she found a wet footprint in the kitchen. It was shaped like a bare human foot and pointed away from the sink. There were no other prints around it. The front door was still locked from the inside. 3 days earlier, Mara had moved into Bracken House, an aging apartment building inherited from her aunt. The place had narrow hallways, unreliable lights, and walls covered with faded green wallpaper. Most of the residents had lived there for decades. The building superintendent, Owen Hale, had given Mara the keys. He was an elderly man with a tired face and a permanent smell of engine oil. He warned her about the old pipes, faulty electricity, and rats in the basement. The man across the hall introduced himself as Daniel Cross. He appeared to be in his late 30s, with pale eyes and carefully combed hair. Although the hallway was warm, he wore thin black gloves. Daniel helped Mara carry a suitcase into the apartment. Before leaving, he looked around the living room and commented that the walls were very thin. He told her that she could hear everything in the building. At the time, Mara thought he was joking. After finding the footprint, she checked every room. The windows were locked. Nothing had been stolen. The only unusual thing was a faint smell of cigarette smoke near the kitchen ventilation grill. Mara did not smoke. She called Owen. He inspected the apartment but found no sign of an intruder. He suggested that water from the sink had formed a shape resembling a footprint. Mara wanted to believe him. That evening, she installed a small security camera in the kitchen. It connected to her phone and recorded whenever it detected movement. At 3:17 in the morning, the application sent an alert. Mara woke immediately. The camera feed showed the empty kitchen. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then the image shook slightly, as if someone had touched the camera. A black-gloved hand covered the lens. The recording stopped. Mara remained in bed until sunrise, holding a kitchen knife beneath the blanket. When she finally entered the kitchen, the camera was still attached to the wall. Its power cable had been removed and placed neatly on the counter. Beside it lay a burned match. The match had not been there the night before. Mara contacted the police, but there was no evidence of forced entry. They advised her to change the locks. Daniel met her in the hallway after the officers left. He already knew about the camera, even though Mara had told no one except the police and Owen. He explained that he had heard the conversation through the wall. Then he smiled and reminded her that Bracken House was an old building. That night, Mara pushed a heavy chair against the front door. Shortly after midnight, she heard something moving behind the kitchen wall. It did not sound like a rat. It sounded like a man crawling slowly through a narrow space. Part 2. The following morning, Mara visited Mrs. Bell, the oldest resident in Bracken House. Mrs. Bell lived 2 floors below and kept 3 locks on her door. When Mara described the sounds, the old woman did not appear surprised. Instead, she removed a notebook from beneath her sofa. It had belonged to Claire Hudson, the woman who rented Mara's apartment before Mara's aunt became ill. Claire vanished 14 months earlier. The police believed she had left the city voluntarily. Mrs. Bell never believed that. Claire had complained about missing food, moved furniture, and the smell of cigarettes inside her locked apartment. She had also heard breathing behind the walls. The final sentence in her notebook was underlined several times. He never uses the doors. Mara returned upstairs and examined the kitchen. The pantry stood against the wall where she had heard the crawling. After removing the shelves, she discovered that the wooden back panel was much thinner than the others. 4 screws held it in place. The screws were new. Mara removed them and pulled the panel forward. Behind it was a dark opening large enough for a person to enter. A narrow maintenance passage extended between the apartments. It was filled with pipes, electrical wires, and wooden support beams. According to Owen, such passages did not exist in Bracken House. Mara turned on her phone's flashlight and climbed inside. The air smelled of dust and stale cigarettes. The passage continued behind the neighboring apartment. Small holes had been drilled through the walls. Through one of them, Mara could see Daniel's empty living room. Through another, she could see her own bed. Someone had constructed a hidden observation room between the walls. It contained water bottles, canned food, tools, and a dirty mattress. Dozens of photographs were attached to the wooden beams. They showed residents sleeping, showering, eating, and watching television. Most had been taken without their knowledge. Several photographs showed Claire Hudson. The final photograph showed Mara asleep in her bed. It had been taken the previous night. Mara covered her mouth to stop herself from screaming. On the floor below the photographs, she noticed a silver matchbox engraved with the initials D.C. Daniel Cross. A sound came from inside Mara's apartment. The pantry panel closed. Someone had entered the kitchen. Mara switched off her flashlight and crawled deeper into the passage. Through a crack in the wall, she saw a shadow moving across her apartment. A man opened her bedroom door and looked inside. Mara could not see his face, but she recognized the black gloves. He stood motionless for nearly a minute. Then he walked to the pantry and placed his hand against the hidden panel. Mara continued crawling. The passage descended sharply before dividing in two. One direction led toward Daniel's apartment. The other went down into the basement. She chose the basement. Behind her, the pantry panel opened. A flashlight beam entered the passage. Daniel knew she was inside. He did not call her name. He did not need to. He simply began crawling after her. Part 3. The passage was barely wide enough for Mara's shoulders. Rusted pipes tore at her clothes as she pulled herself forward. Daniel's light moved steadily behind her. He was not rushing. Mara understood that he had spent years inside these walls. He knew every turn and exit. To him, the passage was not a hiding place. It was his home. The tunnel ended above the basement boiler room. Mara kicked through a loose ventilation grill and fell onto a concrete floor. The room was dark except for the red emergency lights. She found Owen beside the old furnace. His wrists and ankles had been bound with electrical cable. Blood had dried along the side of his face, but he was still alive. Mara freed him with a pair of cutters from his toolbox. Owen explained that Daniel had attacked him after the police visited. Daniel had volunteered to help with repairs around Bracken House for years. This gave him access to building plans, empty apartments, and residence keys. Several tenants had disappeared during that time. All of them were women who lived alone. Claire had discovered one of the hidden passages. Before she could reach the police, Daniel convinced everyone that she was paranoid. A week later, she vanished. Owen had suspected Daniel but never found proof. Now the proof was hidden inside the walls. Mara tried calling the police. Her phone had no signal in the basement. The landline on Owen's desk was dead, and the emergency exit had been locked with a heavy chain. Then the building lost power. Somewhere above them, Daniel activated the intercom system. His voice echoed through every hallway and apartment. He calmly announced that a gas leak had been detected and instructed all residents to remain inside their homes. Mara realized what he was doing. He was making sure no one entered the hallway while he searched for her. Owen led Mara toward an old staircase connecting the basement to the laundry room. Before they reached it, the boiler room door opened. Daniel stood on the other side. He was no longer wearing his friendly expression. In one hand he held a flashlight. In the other, a narrow hunting knife. Owen pushed Mara toward the staircase and turned to block Daniel's path. Mara ran. Behind her came the sound of a struggle, followed by something heavy striking the floor. She reached the laundry room and climbed to the first floor. Every apartment door was closed. The residents had obeyed Daniel's warning. Mara pounded on the nearest door, but no one answered. The intercom activated again. This time, Daniel told the residents that a disturbed woman was wandering through the building. He described Mara's clothes and warned that she might be dangerous. A lock clicked nearby. For a moment, Mara hoped someone was coming to help. Instead, the door opened only a few centimeters. A frightened eye appeared in the gap. When Mara approached, the residents slammed it shut. Footsteps sounded on the staircase below. Daniel was coming. Mara ran toward the upper floors, knowing that he had locked the main exit. There was only one place left to go. The roof. Part 4. Mara climbed 9 floors while Daniel followed at the same patient pace. He occasionally spoke through the intercom, telling everyone that the situation was under control. His calm voice made Mara sound like the threat. On the 9th floor, she found the roof door locked. Daniel appeared at the bottom of the final staircase. Mara searched the wall and found an old manual fire alarm. She broke the protective glass and pulled the handle. Nothing happened. Daniel had disconnected the electrical system. But Brackenhouse still had a mechanical fire bell from before the building was modernized. A steel cable ran from the alarm handle into the ceiling. Mara pulled it repeatedly. Deep inside the walls, a heavy bell began to ring. The sound was enormous. Apartment doors opened throughout the building. Confused residents entered the hallways despite Daniel's instructions. Daniel stopped climbing. Mara ran past him while people emerged from their homes. He could not attack her in front of dozens of witnesses. By the time she reached the ground floor, Daniel had disappeared. Owen was found unconscious in the basement. He survived. The police searched Daniel's apartment and the hidden observation room. They found photographs, stolen keys, recordings, and personal belongings taken from 6 missing women. They did not find Daniel. An opening behind his bedroom wall led into a disused heating tunnel beneath the neighboring buildings. By the time officers discovered it, he was gone. Mara stayed in a hotel while police guarded Brackenhouse. 3 nights later, she received a photograph from an unknown number. It showed Mrs. Bell sitting in her apartment. Her hands were tied, and someone wearing a black glove stood behind her. A message beneath the photograph instructed Mara to return alone. The police believed Daniel was watching the hotel and would know if officers followed her. They wanted to wait and trace the phone. Mara knew Mrs. Bell might not have that much time. She also remembered something from Claire's notebook, a hand-drawn map labeled B12. Police had assumed it referred to a basement storage room, but Brackenhouse had no room with that number. Mara examined the original building plans. B12 was not a room. It was a fire gate inside the maintenance passage. The gate had been installed to stop flames from spreading between the walls. It was controlled by a mechanical lever near Mrs. Bell's apartment. Mara told the detective her plan. Just before midnight, she returned to Brackenhouse wearing a hidden microphone. Officers waited outside the heating tunnel and the main entrances. Mara entered the passage through her pantry. Daniel's voice came from somewhere in the darkness, telling her to continue crawling. She moved deeper between the walls. Ahead, she heard Mrs. Bell breathing. Then a black-gloved hand reached from a side passage and pulled Mara into the dark. Part 5. Daniel pressed the knife against Mara's throat and removed the hidden microphone. He crushed it beneath his boot. Mrs. Bell was tied inside a small chamber beyond the fire gate. She was frightened but alive. Daniel had prepared the chamber carefully. A camera stood in one corner, pointed at a wooden chair. The walls were covered with photographs of his previous victims. He wanted to record Mara's final moments. Mara pretended to be terrified and begged him to let Mrs. Bell go. Her fear pleased him. It made him careless. He moved closer, explaining that the police had never understood him. He did not consider himself a killer. He believed he was preserving the private lives people hid from the world. While he spoke, Mara examined the chamber. The fire gate hung above the passage entrance. Its release cable ran through a metal ring near the floor. The lever on the building plans was outside the chamber, but the cable itself was within reach. Mara asked Daniel whether Claire had cried when he brought her there. The question angered him. He grabbed Mara and dragged her toward the chair, turning his back on Mrs. Bell. Mrs. Bell understood what Mara was attempting. She shifted her bound legs and kicked the metal ring. The release cable moved. Mara pulled it with both hands. The fire gate dropped. Daniel jumped toward the entrance, but the steel barrier slammed down between him and the passage. His knife fell on the other side. For the first time, he appeared frightened. He attacked Mara with his bare hands, but Mrs. Bell knocked the camera stand into his legs. Mara grabbed a loose pipe from the floor and struck him hard enough to force him back. Outside the gate, police officers were already inside the passage. Although Daniel had destroyed Mara's microphone, the fire gate triggered an old mechanical alarm in the basement. Owen heard it and showed the officers the second entrance. Daniel searched for another escape, but the chamber had only one exit. The hidden room that had protected him for years became his prison. Police raised the gate and arrested him. Mrs. Bell was taken to the hospital. She recovered. A search of the heating tunnels revealed what had happened to the missing residents. Daniel had kept trophies from each victim and recorded hundreds of hours of their private lives. The evidence was enough to ensure he would never leave prison. Bracken House was evacuated during the investigation. Workers opened the walls and discovered a network of passages extending through almost every floor. Some had existed since the building was constructed. Others had been created by Daniel. Mara never returned to live in her aunt's apartment. Before the building was renovated, she went back once to collect her belongings. The pantry had been removed, exposing the dark space behind it. For years, Daniel had watched people through those walls. He knew when they slept, when they were alone, and which sounds frightened them. Mara stood in the empty kitchen and listened. The building creaked around her. Water moved through the pipes. Somewhere above, a floorboard groaned. They were normal sounds. But Mara understood why Claire had been afraid. Locks were designed to keep strangers outside. They offered no protection from someone who was already inside.